Haunting teacher tales, 3 bone-chilling true stories that will haunt your classroom forever. The school bell chimed like a death knell, echoing through the empty corridors. It was then that the rumors crawled out, creeping under the classroom doors. Whispers of the ghostly teacher whose shadow flickered at the edges of eyesight became the stuff of nightmares. Everyone knew about Miss Barrington, the teacher whose sudden disappearance left only chilling tales behind. Her classroom. It felt alive, buzzing with a strange energy that twisted the very air. Students claimed they saw flickering lights and heard her soft voice calling even when the room stood still, wrapping around them like a cold mist. What happened to her? Did she find a way to stay, even after death? Then there was the legend of the history room, a place suffocated by darkness. Year after year, it saw strange happenings. Shelves would rattle, textbooks flew open, revealing pages of ghostly inscriptions. Those who stepped inside often felt watched. A shiver would race up their spine, and without fail, they'd bolt for the door, breathless, heart racing. It was said that an old spirit, a former teacher, roamed there, seeking justice for the wrongs of her past life. Amidst the unsettling aura, another story twisted through the air, one that struck terror deep in the heart of even the bravest student. Mr. Thompson, the beloved science teacher, vanished during a class field trip to an old, spooky mansion. His eerie scream echoed through the halls, leaving shadows of fear in its wake. Days turned into weeks, and still, no sign of him. The rumor mill churned relentlessly, claiming he'd been taken by something sinister lurking in that house. His classroom became a ghost of its former self. His desk remained untouched, as if he'd simply stepped out for a moment, never to return. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Every child secretly hoped they could shake off the goosebumps, yet they craved the thrill of the unknown. What lay in store beyond the eerie history of Miss Barrington? Was there truly a dark force entwined with these tales? As shadows danced across the walls, questions loomed heavy in the air, begging for answers. But darkness, after all, rarely gives up its secrets easily. What if the truth was more horrifying than anything they had ever imagined? The clock ticked ominously, each second echoing like a heartbeat in the freezing silence of the hallways. As the sun dipped low, casting eerie shadows, the weight of the tales hung thick in the air. Tonight, a small group of students dared to gather after classes, lured by the thrill of the supernatural. They exchanged nervous glances, the light inside the school flickering ominously even as they settled down in a circle within the rickety history room. Kelsey, the brave-hearted ringleader, leaned in with a hushed voice. What if we try to contact Miss Barrington? Her suggestion sent a ripple of excitement and dread running through the group. They had all heard the stories, the chilling tales of the teacher's spirit tethered to her abandoned classroom. Are you crazy? Dan whispered sharply, his wide eyes darting towards the dark corners of the room. You really want to mess with that? But the thrill had already settled into a frenzy of curiosity. Let us just do it, Kelsey insisted, her voice low but filled with confidence. What's the worst that could happen? Her laughter rang hollow, echoing in the stillness that surrounded them. Gathering old candles, they placed them in a circle on the dusty floor. Flickering light glinted off the spines of neglected textbooks, a testament to countless students who had come before them. Kelsey took a deep breath and reached for an old, tattered notebook found in a forgotten drawer. This was Miss Barrington's, she said, excitement and fear mixing in her voice. Maybe she'll hear us. With the flickering candles illuminating their faces, Kelsey began to read aloud the stories and letters penned by Miss Barrington, her voice wrapping around them like a thick fog. As she spoke, an unnatural chill swept through the room. An unsettling breeze pushed hard against the windows, rattling them like a distant spirit knocking at the door. "Is the window open?" whispered Jenna, her voice shaking. The air felt charged, electric with expectation. The others looked at one another, uncertainty creeping in. A low creak echoed through the room, as if something just outside was shifting. Then, abruptly, one of the candles blew out, plunging half the circle into darkness. A gasp erupted, and panic spread like wildfire. The flickering shadows twisted and contorted on the walls. Kelsey reached for another candle, her hands trembling. "It must be just the wind," she breathed, trying to steady herself. "Or something else," Dan said, his voice barely above a whisper. The room seemed to pulse in rhythm with their racing hearts. The remaining candles flickered weakly, casting strange shapes on the walls. Then a voice, soft and distant but undeniably present, slipped through the air. "Help!" Each student froze, hearts pounding in their chests. Kelsey's eyes widened, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily. Was that the ghost? Jenna squeaked, barely able to contain her fear. But it wasn't just fear. They felt it was a shocking realization that they might have actually reached beyond the veil. As Kelsey clutched the notebook, a sudden gust burst through the room, extinguishing the last candle. They were cloaked in darkness. The pulse of dread thrummed loudly with every second of silence. But before they had a chance to react, a loud pounding echoed from the door. "Let me out!" A voice echoed, ripping through their terrified minds like a shriek in the night. What the hell was happening? Who was it? Were they truly not alone anymore? As they scrambled for the exit, one question lodged in their minds, a terrifying realization sunk in: had Miss Barrington truly been calling for help, or was it something far worse that lingered in the shadows? The air thickened as panic turned to urgency. Desperately they turned, hands fumbling for the handle as the uncontrollable urge to escape filled them. Would they make it out, or was the darkness about to drag them into its depths? What awaited them outside that door, and could they ever regain their sanity after what they had encountered? The door rattled violently, making the entire frame shudder. Kelsey's heart pounded so hard against her ribs, she feared it might break free. "What do we do?" she gasped, her breath quickening. "We have to get out," Dan shouted, shoving past the others, his urgency infectious. As if the shadows themselves were listening, the pounding intensified. "Let me out!" The voice pleaded again, desperation lacing every syllable. It could belong to no one from their group, and the realization settled like ice in the pit of Kelsey's stomach. Jenna moved back, her wide eyes reflecting the fear of the unknown. "What if it's Miss Barrington?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Kelsey shook her head. "We don't know what we're dealing with." She fumbled with the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. It was like the darkness itself had locked them inside. It stuck. A chill swept through the room, colder than before. The remaining candles flickered like dying stars. In that moment of panic, the very air felt different, charged with a promise of something sinister. Then, out of the silence, a low, haunting sound broke through, echoing against the walls. It was not a friendly laugh, it was mocking, filled with malice. Kelsey felt her skin crawl. "Please, just stop," she shouted into the shadows, her voice cracking. Suddenly, the walls seemed to close in, as if the room itself was alive, swallowing their courage one breath at a time. Dan pressed against the door with all his might. "We need to fight it, get it open." "Fight it? What even is it?" Jenna cried, her voice high-pitched now, the fear stripped away any rationality left in the room. Kelsey felt a surge of determination. "We have to remember why we're here." She turned back to the dark remnants of the room, focusing on the cracked surface of the desk where Miss Barrington had once marked papers. "We came to connect. If we anger whatever's here, we need to apologize." Dan interrupted, his voice laced with disbelief. "Are you out of your mind?" "Maybe it's a way to reason," Kelsey pressed, her eyes wide. "There's something here, and it's angry, but it might also be scared." Before Dan could respond, a deafening crash sounded from the board at the front of the room, an ominous thud that rattled their very souls. The students screamed in unison. The chalkboard slid down, revealing a dark, hidden space behind it. "What the hell is that?" Dan gasped, his eyes glued to the crevice. "I don't know," Kelsey replied, her heart racing. "But we have to go and see." Just as she took a tentative step toward the dark, a soft whisper echoed around them. "Help me please." It was the same voice, layered now with urgency and despair. The shadows danced in the corners, alive with unseen movements. Kelsey took a deep breath, clutching the notebook tightly, and felt a warmth pulse in her hand. "I think maybe if we read more." "Read?" Dan sputtered. "You want to summon it again?" "No, I want to communicate," she replied firmly. "It's not just anything. This ghost, it might need us." But the room seemed to pulse again, as if in response to her words. The air grew heavier, pressing against their chests. They all turned toward the door once more, a choice between the unknown and the tangibility of the haunting unanswered call. Fear melded with curiosity, making the air thicken with tension. Would this ledge of darkness, or the secrets hidden behind the chalkboard, lead them to something deeper, more terrible than they could ever imagine? As they exchanged one last look, the wall began to groan, and they knew the time had come to decide. Would they step forward into the unknown, or would they break free from the chains of fear suffocating them? "Who are we really dealing with?" Kelsey whispered, her heart racing. Little did they know, the answer was lurking just behind the door, waiting for them to make their move. The room dimmed further, shadows lengthening like dark tendrils reaching toward them. Kelsey's hands shook as she peered into the crevice behind the chalkboard, the whispering voice still echoing in her ears. "Help me please. Do we really want to find out what's in there?" Jenna's voice cracked, thick with panic. "What if it's a trick?" "It has to be connected to Miss Barrington," Kelsey insisted, her conviction hardening against the trembling atmosphere. "This ghost, whoever it is, might know something about her. Then it could be dangerous." Dan shot back, frustration fueling his fear. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting hands of the dark to reach out and grab him. Kelsey swallowed hard, looking at her friends, their faces a mix of dread and determination. "We can't leave without trying. We can't just lock our fear in and walk away." With one swift movement, she launched herself forward, her feet barely touching the floor as she crouched down to peer more closely into the hidden space. The darkness coiled tighter, the faint whisper growing louder. It beckoned her, tantalizing and terrifying all at once. A gust of cold air blasted from the crevice, sending her hair whipping back and freezing her breath in her throat. "Kelsey, wait!" Dan shouted, lunging forward to pull her back, but she was already lost in the pull of the darkness. "I have to know," she called over her shoulder, her voice trembling as she reached into the void. As her fingers brushed against something cool and smooth, the world around her shifted. Vivid flashes of a classroom flooded her mind. Miss Barrington, with her warm smile, the laughter of students, a tangible sense of safety. But then it changed. The room darkened, the laughter morphed into screams, the warmth twisted into icy dread. Kelsey gasped, pulling her hand back as if burned. She stumbled back, blinking rapidly, her heart racing. "No, this isn't right." "What did you see?" Jenna demanded, fear etched on her face. It was her. She was in pain, Kelsey stammered, panic slick on her skin. "We need to help her. The only pain I see is ours if we keep messing with this." Dan snapped, fear cracking his voice. "This is insane." But before anyone could protest further, a sound echoed through the room. It was an anguished wail that seemed to rise from the very walls. The chilling cry pierced their minds, a longing mixed with despair that made the air turn to ice. "Stop it!" Jenna screamed, clutching at her arms as if to protect herself from the encroaching darkness. Kelsey shook her head, pushing against the overwhelming weight of fear. "If we can just understand the voice." She grabbed the notebook and flipped it open, scanning the pages filled with Miss Barrington's notes. "Are you sure about that?" Dan shouted, but Kelsey wasn't listening. Words flowed through her mind like threads unspooling. The key to the mystery lay within her grasp. A sudden crash erupted as something unseen slammed against the door. The candle flame sputtered violently, flickering wildly. The room felt as if it might tear itself apart. "Run!" Dan yelled, lunging towards the door, but it was still locked tight, refusing to budge. The walls shook, threatening to crush them beneath the weight of the unseen. "Wait!" Kelsey cried, panic surging in her chest. "We can't give up. Not now." But the door shuddered again, and Jenna screamed, "It's going to break. We have to get out." "Not until I find the answers." Kelsey shouted over the chaos, desperation coursing through her veins. Just then, something flickered at the edge of the crevice. A figure began to emerge, twisted and shadowy, the echoes of sorrow reverberating through the air. The voice whispered again, desperate and pleading. "Help me please." The darkness swirled, revealing just enough for Kelsey to see a fleeting face, anguished, yet hopeful. Who was this apparition? "Please find me," it whispered again, and with that, the flickering candlelight dimmed to almost nothing. "Kelsey, we have to go," Dan insisted, grabbing her arm. But Kelsey stood frozen, the figure's eyes locking onto hers, filled with a deep, haunting sorrow. Unbeknownst to her, a decision hung in the air, heavy with the weight of history and tragedy. What would they uncover if they dared to confront the shadows? With a final, determined glance at the creeping darkness, Kelsey took a step forward, and the room trembled ominously. What kind of truth had been wrapped up in this ghostly plea? The answer lingered just out of reach, beckoning them deeper into the mystery. As Kelsey stepped closer, her heart pounded rhythmically, each beat an echo of dread. The room twisted, and a veil of icy wind whipped around them, tightening like a chokehold. She felt Dan's grip on her arm, urging her to retreat, but the spectral figure drew her in, promising answers. "What do you want?" Kelsey breathed, her voice steady despite the rising fear. "Help me." The voice, now clearer, filled the room with despair. It carried the weight of something profound and terrible. "They took my voice, my story. Find me." Jenna squeezed her eyes shut, trembling, while Dan shifted nervously. "This is insane. We need to get out," he implored, his voice tearing desperately through the engulfing gloom. "I can't." Kelsey snapped back, pulling free from his grip. "We have to understand her." Another pitch-black gust swept through the room, rattling the windows. The presence intensified, filling the air with sorrow. Shadows curled around Kelsey as if trying to bind her to the spot. She could feel a pull, a magnetic force tugging her consciousness toward an unknown truth. "Help us help you," she called, her tone wavering but determined. "Tell us what happened." For a moment, silence settled, thick as fog, then the spectral face seemed to flicker closer, eyes pooling with unshed tears of longing. "The truth lies within the walls and the memory locked away," it whispered, fading in and out like a flickering candle. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. "What memory? What are you talking about?" The figure dissipated, swirling away like smoke, leaving nothing but a deep chill in its wake, as if the room had lost its very soul. Kelsey shook her head, confusion and determination mingling in the depths of her being. "We need the notebook," she rasped, racing toward the desk where they had found Miss Barrington's old notes. "Are you crazy?" Dan shouted in disbelief. "This is not the time for, just trust me." Kelsey interrupted, flipping through the pages with frantic fingers. Scribbled notes, strange symbols, and sketches of the classroom began to blur together in her periphery. There, among them, a phrase jumped out, a warning scrawled in haste: "The truth must be set free." Suddenly, a loud crash rang through the air as the door rattled violently. Whatever was outside was relentless, wanting in, growing more furious. "We don't have much time," Jen cried, panic setting her voice alight. The air grew thick and stifling, the urgency of the moment pressing around them. What truth could possibly be hidden within these pages that could bridge the gap between worlds? I think I know, Kelsey whispered, piecing together the fragmented thoughts racing through her mind. There was something about Miss Barrington, something she hadn't yet grasped. She was trying to tell us. She was silenced. What? By who? Dan's voice rose, a mix of fear and curious determination. Kelsey's heart raced as recognition hit her. The past. We have to go to where it all began. The old classroom. The one that used to be down the hall. Jenna stared at Kelsey, wide-eyed. But that's where she died. It's where it all happened. Exactly. Kelsey's lips pressed into a determined line, fueled by both fear and hope, and just then, a loud thump echoed through the room again, as if something unseen was trying to break through the boundaries of time and space to reach them. The shadows thickened around them, encroaching like an army. With an unwavering resolve, Kelsey turned to her friends. Are you with me? Dan hesitated, his eyes darting around, searching for safety in the claustrophobic shadow. Finally, he nodded, albeit reluctantly. Let us go, Kelsey said, and they rushed toward the door, hearts pounding fiercely in their chests. As they stepped out into the dim hallway, the air crackled with tension. Their breaths were shallow, their fears tangible. But lurking in the silence was the potent promise of revelation, a forgotten truth waiting to be unearthed. The ghost's anguished plea still echoed in their ears, drawing them ever closer to the dark heart of the mystery. What had been silenced? What? Darkness had wrapped itself around the school so tightly it threatened to choke the very life from it. Steeling themselves, they moved down the corridor, where unspeakable secrets whispered through the very walls, but would the truth liberate them or undo them completely? The hallway felt alive, vibrating with the whispers of the past. Kelsey led the way, her heart thundered, each step echoing like a drumbeat in her ears. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, shadowy fingers that danced along the walls, playing tricks on her strung-out nerves. Dan followed close, his breath rapid and uneven. I can't believe we're doing this, he muttered, uncertainty lacing his voice. What if we end up like her? Don't say that, Jenna shot back, only half convincing herself as fear clawed at her throat. We're not going to end like Miss Barrington. We're going to save her. Or we'll provoke whatever is haunting this place, Dan replied, his hands clenched into tight fists. Kelsey pushed open the door to the old classroom at the end of the hall. Dust swirled, illuminating the remnants of an era long forgotten. Desks were overturned, papers scattered like fallen leaves, and the smell of mildew permeated the air. The ghostly touch of despair wrapped around her like a shroud. She stepped inside cautiously, her instincts screaming that this was a threshold into realms unseen. The chill settled deep in her bones. This is it, she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the fear that simmered beneath. What now? Jenna asked, her eyes wide, scanning the dim room. The shadows seemed to stretch, pulling the corners of the space deeper into darkness. The notebook, Kelsey reminded herself, sifting through the mess on the floor. Her hands quivered as she caught sight of a familiar spiraled cover beneath a cracked desk. It has to be here. And just then, an unnatural sound crackled through the silence, a whisper intermingled with the haunting echoes of the past. Help me. It formed like a shadow against the wall, and Kelsey felt something sharp streak down her spine. Did you hear that? Dan spun around, eyes flaring wide. Something's in here with us. Focus. Kelsey snapped, a rush of adrenaline flying through her. She grabbed the notebook and flung it open. As she scanned over the hastily scratched notes, panic flickered behind her eyes. There has to be something. The whispers grew louder, swirling in a cacophony of urgency. Set it free, find the memories. A chill swept through the room, causing the tips of Kelsey's fingers to numb. She could feel shadows reaching, attempting to pull her back into their icy grip. Wait. Here. Look. Jenna shouted, pointing to a page that contained a sketch of the classroom, but with something someone standing in one of the corners, a figure unnaturally obscured by scribbles. It resembled the spectral figure they had encountered. What if this is how she died? Dan turned, pale and agitated. We can't do this. We shouldn't be here. Kelsey ignored him, her heart racing as clarity struck. We have to recreate her last moments. Are you out of your mind? Dan raged, but the fear in his voice hinted at his unwilling curiosity. The only way we find her is to uncover the truth hidden here, Kelsey urged. We can do this. A sudden wind burst through the open window, sending the pages of the notebook scattering like frightened birds. The items inside the classroom began to tremble, and a portrait hanging on the wall swung wildly, as if something was reaching out at them. Please. The sorrowful whisper morphed into an anguished wail, embodying years of trapped emotions, spiraling through the room. Set me free. Kelsey felt her resolve tingle in her chest, a promise made. We won't leave you, she declared boldly, feeling the pulse of destiny pushing against her courage, but before they could process their next move, the ground beneath them shook as shadows erupted into life, swirling like a storm. Darkness engulfed the room as the air thickened painfully, contorting every breath into a near impossibility. Run! Jenna shrieked, and without thinking, they bolted, hearts racing, desperation fueling their escape. As they hurled themselves toward the door, Kelsey clutched the notebook tightly, knowing the fractured truths within were their only hope and possibly their doom. Could they survive the darkness, or would the vengeful spirit consume them? The answer awaited just beyond the next turn, where secrets lay shrouded in whispers far more dangerous than they had yet to encounter. The air was thick with panic as they stumbled out of the classroom, their feet pounding against the warped wooden floor. The darkness clawed at their ankles, almost as if it wished to drag them back. Kelsey felt the chill biting into her skin, but adrenaline screamed louder. They reached the end of the hallway, gasping for breath, hearts pounding in sync. What the hell was that? Dan managed to choke out, leaning against the damp wall for support. Jenna's eyes glimmered with unshed tears. We don't have time to waste. We need to get back. The urgency in her voice combined with Kelsey's fear ignited a new fire in them. Kelsey clutched the notebook tightly. They had come too far to turn back now. No, wait. The notebook, there has to be something else in it. A clue, she insisted, her fingers trembling as she flipped through the pages. The whispers that had filled the classroom seemed to linger in the air around them, wrapping around each word like an unwelcome shroud. Kelsey's heart lurched when she landed on a sketch of the school's basement, a map drawn in frenzied strokes. She peered closely, her gut twisting as she spotted an X marking a section labeled the resting place. We have to go to the basement, Kelsey said, her voice edged with determination. This is where we'll find the truth. This is where we'll save her. Are you insane? Dan snapped. We barely escaped that room. What makes you think going deeper into this twisted nightmare is going to help? Jenna's voice was quieter now, reflecting her fear. But what if that's where she is? What if she's trapped down there? Kelsey felt their fear, but it only fueled her resolve. We have to try. The spirits, they need resolution. And maybe this is our ticket to uncovering what happened to her. Before Dan could protest again, Kelsey bolted for the staircase that spiraled down into the dark belly of the school. Dan followed reluctantly, glancing back at the hallway as if it were going to swallow them whole. Jenna was close behind, a tentative light of hope flickering in her eyes. The stairs creaked and groaned beneath them, the air growing colder with every step downwards. Shadows darted from corner to corner as their flashlight beams danced crazily against the damp walls. Kelsey could almost hear the whispering from the classroom, growing louder, wrapping itself around them like a fraying thread. They reached the basement door, its paint peeling and warped. Kelsey hesitated, glancing back at Dan, whose face was pale and drawn. Are you ready? He hesitated too long. No. But I don't think we have a choice. With a deep breath, Kelsey pushed the door open. It creaked ominously, revealing a space swallowed by darkness. The air felt heavier, suffocating, pressed against their chests. A single flicker of light from the flashlight illuminated old filing cabinets and broken furniture, memories of lessons long past buried under years of neglect. As they stepped inside, the whispers surged again, this time like a crashing wave. "Rest find me" ended in the flickering light. Kelsey caught sight of something, a faint outline against the far wall. A figure? She squinted, her heart racing. A burst of wind swept through the basement, causing cold air to swirl around them. The echoes of despair cut through the room, twisting her stomach in knots. "Please, I'm here." It was a voice, but one that resonated from a deep, dark place, an invitation and a warning. "Is that?" Jenna's voice trembled as she raised her light toward the shape. Kelsey took a step forward. "No, wait. Don't." But it was too late. As the light shone brighter, the figure began to take form, revealing anguished features twisted in pain. The whispers crescendoed into a terrifying chorus, electrifying the air with raw emotion. "Help me, set me free." In that instant, the room began to collapse in on itself, shadows swirling with intent. Kelsey felt the room tremble. "We need to get out. Now." She spun around, eyes wide with horror as the walls seemed to pulse and breathe, alive with desperation. They turned to run, but the darkness pursued them, hungry and relentless. Shadows reached, grappling with tangible force. As they sprinted back toward the staircase, Kelsey yelled, "What if we can't escape? What if this is the end?" In the final second before they burst through the doorway, she felt a chill creep down her spine, a revelation looming ahead. What if they were never meant to escape? What if the truth was tied to them, woven into the fabric of their fates? The door slammed behind them, echoing like a death knell. What awaited them in the light of truth, and had they truly left the darkness behind? They stumbled into the hallway, breathless, hearts pounding even faster than before. The cacophony of whispers faded slightly, but a heavy weight still pressed down on their chests. Kelsey grasped onto the wall, steadying herself as fear coursed through her veins. What was that?" Dan gasped, wiping sweat from his brow. "I don't know, but we need to keep moving," Kelsey urged, her voice shaking with urgency. "That wasn't just a ghost." It felt desperate. Desperate to trap us. Dan spat, glancing over his shoulder as if the darkness itself were stalking them. Jenna's eyes were wide, scanning for any sign of danger. "Stop." Kelsey turned to them, her body tense. "We can't let fear control us. We need to figure out what is happening. The notebook, the map, it has answers." The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the walls, as if to question their resolve. Kelsey felt the pull of the basement, an undeniable connection drawing her toward the unknown. "We have to go back. We need to confront it, whatever it was." Jenna shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. "But what if it's too late? We don't know what will happen next." Kelsey's heart raced. "We can't give up. Someone is trapped, we owe it to them to find out what happened." Dan ran a hand through his messy hair, a deep frown etched across his face. "You don't seriously think we can save some spirit, do you? What if it's been waiting for us? What if we're the next victims?" Kelsey felt a chill. The image of the anguished figure, lost and pleading, raced through her mind. "We won't know unless we try." With a shared glance that conveyed silent fear yet undeniable determination, they made their way back to the basement door. Each step felt agonizingly slow, as if time itself wanted to delay their confrontation. The air grew colder, thickening with an electric tension that wrapped around them like a vice. The door creaked as they pushed it open again, revealing the dark maw of the basement that had briefly swallowed them. The whispers came back, but this time they had a distinct urgency, a melody woven with desperation. Kelsey's pulse quickened, and she gripped her flashlight tightly, illuminating the vast dark ahead. As they stepped inside, the air crackled, heavier with tension. Kelsey noticed something new, the temperature had plummeted. The shadows stirred, almost alive, reacting to their presence. The weight of eyes upon them felt unmistakable. "What if we shouldn't be here?" Jenna whispered, peering into the dark. Kelsey could see her trembling. "No turning back now," Kelsey said firmly. "We need to find that resting place." Just then, the sound of scuffling echoed from deeper in the basement. Her breath hitched in her throat, and Dan instinctively took a step back. What was that? He glanced at Kelsey, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "Let's check it out," Kelsey encouraged, squinting into the oppressive shadows. The flashlight beam quivered, catching fleeting glimpses of decayed shelves and cobwebs, each corner seeming to hide something sinister. They moved cautiously, the whispers swelling around them, revealing secrets too dreadful to fully comprehend. Then, out of the darkness, a low groan emerged, sending shivers racing down Kelsey's spine. "Help me please." The voice was familiar, yet far away, echoing through the hall like a fading reminder of better days. Who is it?" Jenna cried, her voice quaking. Kelsey's heart raced. The voice tugged at something deep within her. "Stay close," Kelsey said, even as fear clawed at her resolve. They turned towards the source, the intensity of the moment heightening every second. Shadows danced erratically, as if urging them onward, deeper into the abyss. As they cautiously approached the source of the sound, Kelsey's stomach twisted. "We need to know. We have to face whatever this is," she breathed, gathering every ounce of courage. Just then, the floor beneath them trembled, and with a furious roar, the basement walls seemed to shift, the space contracting like a black hole, drawing them in. "What's happening?" Dan shouted, panic spilling into his voice. Kelsey felt the walls closing in, her chest tightening as her vision blurred with terror. "Do you feel that?" Kelsey gasped, her mind racing. They stood on the brink of discovery, the air thick with anticipation. The darkness beckoned with promises of revelations and dangers. But just as Kelsey thought they were ready to confront the truth, the very ground beneath them cracked open, and she felt herself falling a free fall into the unknown. As the darkness consumed her, one question echoed in her mind: were they ready to unveil the deepest secrets hidden within their haunted school? And would they survive the encounter that awaited them in the shadows? Kelsey hit the ground hard, her body absorbed by the cold earth below. Dazed, she lay there for a moment, the beating of her heart drowning out everything else. The taste of fear was metallic on her tongue. She blinked, hoping to clear her head, but the surroundings were still shrouded in ominous darkness. "Dan! Jenna!" she shouted, panic slicing through her voice. She scrambled to sit up, her flashlight flickering erratically among the shadows. "Here." Dan's voice emerged from the void. Relief flooded through Kelsey, but it was quickly smothered by the pressing weight of fear as she struggled to find him. "Stay where you are," Kelsey called back, trying to remember the direction from which they had fallen. Just then, a beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating a grim scene. Dan crouched beside Jenna, who was clutching her knees, her face pale. Kelsey's heart sank further as she rushed to them, chest tight with worry. "What just happened? Are you both okay?" "We fell through. I think we're in some sort of tunnel," Dan said, trembling as he cast his beam around, revealing walls dampened with moisture and seeming to pulse with unseen energy. "Great, just great," Jenna muttered, her eyes darting. "What are we going to do now?" Kelsey's instincts kicked in, guiding her thoughts. "We need to keep moving. We can't just wait here." As they teetered on the brink of decision, the whispers returned, louder and more intense, echoing off the walls. "Help, help," they seemed to wail, igniting a primal dread deep in their souls. Suddenly, the whispers shifted, transforming into frantic pleas for release. "They can see you. They can see you." The words crashed around them like violent waves, threatening to pull them under. "What do they mean?" Dan breathed, his knuckles turning white around the flashlight. Kelsey felt chills creeping up her spine. Maybe it means we're not alone," she said, her voice trembling. With a silent agreement, they pressed deeper into the darkness, inching forward as the air around them thickened with anguish. Every step felt agonizing, like each shadow was a tether to their worst nightmares. Kelsey suddenly caught a glimmer of something, a sliver of light up ahead. There! She shouted, hope flickering in her chest. But as they approached, the light waned, merging into an ominous glow that unveiled an expansive chamber filled with remnants of the past, old classrooms, broken desks, and chalkboards coated in dust. What the hell is this place? Jenna gasped, the end of her flashlight illuminating scattered books, their spines cracked and pages yellowing with age. Kelsey's pulse thrummed in her ears. I think it's a forgotten part of the school, she whispered. Maybe this is where the resting place is. But just as she spoke the words, a loud crash echoed from behind them, and they whirled around, light beams shaking with their fear. The tunnel entrance had collapsed, sealing them in, trapping them in this nightmarish realm. No! Kelsey gasped, her heart racing as she felt the walls pulse closer. What if we're stuck here forever? Hold on! Dan shouted, the flashlight's beam slicing through the darkness. We need to find another way out. As they frantically searched the room, the whispers became increasingly frantic, morphing into screams that wrapped around them like chains. Find it. Find the resting place. What is that? Jenna screamed, her voice closer to hysterics. Kelsey felt a pull toward a shadowed corner of the chamber, a flicker of recognition igniting her memory. We have to investigate that. Kelsey urged, pointing towards the darkened area where an old desk stood, seemingly untouched by time. At that moment, the room shuddered, and the air thickened with a mix of desperation and fury. Get out! Before it's too late. Kelsey grabbed Dan and Jenna's arms, desperately pulling them toward the desk. We'll find a way, I promise. But just as they reached the desk, the ground below them trembled violently. Everything went silent for a split second, then a blinding light exploded from the floor, illuminating the room with fiery intensity. The shadows screeched in protest, wrapping around them like a shroud. Kelsey's heart raced as she braced for an impact she couldn't prepare for. As the ceiling began to collapse around them, one thought screamed in her mind: would they uncover the truth, or would the school forever keep its dreadful secret buried in darkness? And just as the light consumed them, Kelsey felt the ground slip from beneath her feet again. Light engulfed Kelsey, Dan, and Jenna, engulfing the trio in a blinding cascade of white. For a heartbeat, everything was suspended in a serene void. Then, with a violent punch, reality slammed back into existence. They landed on hard, solid ground. Kelsey blinked, disoriented, trying to make sense of her surroundings. The whispers faded, replaced by an echoing silence that roared in her ears. Slowly, the world came back into focus. They were in the old classroom, the very one Miss Barrington had occupied before her tragic end. The air hung heavy with dust motes, swirling in the sunlight that streamed through cracked windows. The remnants of the past surrounded them. Desks were still pushed aside, papers strewn haphazardly across the floor. But something was different. The oppressive veil of darkness seemed lifted. I can't believe we're back, Dan gasped, glancing around, uncertainty etched into his features. Jenna was wide-eyed, a mixture of fear and relief flickering across her face. Did we escape? Kelsey felt a twinge of something, trepidation mixed with resolve. I think we just might have. She took a cautious step forward, the familiar chill surrounding her felt more like a plea than a threat. Miss Barrington? She called softly, her voice echoing through the aged space. The weight of past memories wrapped around her. Can you hear us? Silence answered at first, and her heart sank. But then, a gentle breeze stirred through the room, lifting a few scattered pages into the air. They danced playfully in the light, like spirits freed from confinement. Help me, the voice echoed in her mind, soft but imperious. Kelsey's heartbeat fluttered as she stepped closer to the front of the classroom, where a pale outline began to form, the silhouette of a woman, dressed in garb from long ago. Miss Barrington stood before them, her expression a mix of sorrow and yearning, shimmering between this world and the next. The class murmured around her in respectful silence. I'm here, Kelsey whispered, her voice barely breaking the stillness. "We want to help you. We found your notebook." Miss Barrington's eyes flickered, an inescapable sadness visible within their depths. "You uncovered truths buried deep, truths I thought lost forever," she said, her voice like a distant echo, filled with wisdom. "The memories, they bind my spirit. Hear what happened to you?" Jenna asked, trembling slightly, but pulling courage from Kelsey's steady presence. "I was silenced, my voice stolen by betrayal," Miss Barrington lamented. "But you found the path to my past. You must unearth it, set me free, or I shall remain a prisoner of this grief." Kelsey nodded, understanding the importance of their newfound knowledge. "How do we help you?" The spectral figure floated closer, her expression growing hopeful. "Within the walls of this classroom lies a hidden memory, a locked drawer in my desk. Open it, and unveil the truth of my demise." Kelsey felt her stomach drop, but determination surged within her. "Let us do it." With Jenna and Dan close behind, they approached the old desk at the front of the room. The wood felt solid, nearly alive in anticipation. Kelsey knelt and fumbled with the drawer, which moved grudgingly under her fingers, as if it dreaded revealing whatever lay inside. But with a strong yank, it opened willingly. Inside, they found a stack of old letters, yellowed paper trembling in their hands. Kelsey read the first one aloud. "To dear Miss Barrington, your lessons inspire us even as others threaten your tenure." As they read on, the pieces clicked together: office politics, unfounded accusations, a cruel twist of fate that turned peers against Miss Barrington. Kelsey felt a pang of anger lift in her chest. They had defamed her legacy, but the truth would now be set free. "Thank you," Miss Barrington whispered, emotion flooding her voice. "You have released my burdens." The spectral form shimmered, golden hues cascading around her as light began to envelop her figure. "Remember me not for the pain but for the lessons learned." With a final, radiant smile, she unfolded into a spiral of golden light, lifting toward the heavens until she was no more. Kelsey, Jenna, and Dan stood in awe, tears prickling at the corners of their eyes. In a heartbeat, the classroom felt different, lighter, brighter. Freed from the chains that once held it captive, they exchanged stunned glances. "Did we really do it?" Jenna asked, awe lingering between them. "We did," Kelsey replied, her heart swelling with triumph. "We uncovered the truth, and now she can finally rest." Stepping out of the classroom, they closed the door behind them, leaving the past where it belonged. The dark shadows had faded, replaced by the warmth of hope and liberation. "This is it, isn't it?" Dan said quietly, smiling as the sunlight flooded in. "No more haunting teacher tales, we're the ones who changed the story." "Exactly," Kelsey said, feeling an exhilarating surge of power. "Let us ensure no one forgets her again," she added, determination blazing in her heart. Their school had secrets, but those secrets were now shared lessons that would linger, long after the walls fell silent. As they strode down the hallway, laughter bubbling up from deep within, they knew they would carry Miss Barrington's legacy forward, set free in every classroom to come. So here's the deal, friends. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more exclusive stories like this one. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us get these tales out there. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happened in this story. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference. Let us keep this amazing community growing stronger.